They didn't imagine anything. No one could have imagined what was behind those old, wrinkled, and faded clothes she wore every day as if they were an invisible uniform. The university she had arrived, it seemed like another world. Luxury, style, people who seemed to shine with every step. But she, with her worn-out jeans and her sweater full of holes, was a perfect target for laughter behind her back, for whispers and burning stares. And yet, she stayed there silent, unseen, enduring every irony and every malicious comment. Until one day, everything changed. Suddenly, a secret broke the silence. And what she was hiding not only made those who mocked her look ridiculous, but made the entire university have to see her with new eyes. Who was that student in old clothes and such a calm attitude, really? The question grew bigger when unexpected news exploded across campus. What seemed like an ordinary girl, the simplest and most forgotten halls, was hiding something no one could have imagined. A story that, if revealed, would rewrite the rules of that elitist place and shake the lives of many. Anna had been enduring the mockery for weeks with a smile that had deep exhaustion. She had learned to turn a deaf ear, because she knew that, until now, the power was on the wrong side. Her classmates, children of wealthy families with impeccable looks, would never understand what it takes to survive here without a fortune behind you. But something beat inside Anna, something strong and real, a fire no scorn could extinguish. The university was a microcosm of inequalities. In every classroom, in every cafeteria, at every corner, those tensions were felt. The kids wearing clothes designed by the best brands didn't hesitate to throw hurtful comments. Still got that jacket? Not $1 for something decent. Are you in class or to recycle clothes? Were common phrases that hung in the air like venomous darts with a smile. And Anna, however, did not respond. Not because she couldn't, but because she had other plans. The mystery behind Anna began with small clues, barely noticeable to others. She wasn't just any humble girl barely able to pay for college. No one believed it because her appearance said it all. But she, with her quiet pace, began doing something unexpected. She got involved in study groups, earned the best grades, and above all, maintained that calm that seemed fearless. Something was brewing beneath the surface. One day, in one of those classes where competition was fierce, Anna presented a project that left everyone speechless, not only for its impeccable quality, but for a bold proposal that unsettled her classmates. There, her rivals understood that she wasn't just decoration or a victim. Anna had come to win, quietly, without bragging, with a secret weapon not visible at first glance. But up to that point, they still didn't know the driving force behind it all. What in her past kept her so steady? And beyond that, what would happen if the truth were revealed? Because in that university, as in life, there comes a moment when invisibility becomes impossible. And when it explodes, no one comes out the same. Tension built up. Looks of disdain gave way to surprise. Interest, even delayed admiration. But what followed was not just a superficial change of perception. What appeared next was news no one saw coming that would completely change the image they had of Anna. Suddenly, that girl everyone underestimated became the protagonist of an unexpected twist that left everyone questioning how well they really knew those they judged so quickly. She was no longer the weak figure in old clothes. She was an unstoppable force and a closely kept secret, a truth that burst like a tsunami amidst that environment of arrogance and exclusion. The time had come to understand that appearances deceive, and that even visible poverty can hide a wealth money can't buy. Anna had something invaluable. What was it? Where did it come from? That was a great unknown that no one could solve, and that the entire university was about to discover, while the rich and vain sank into their own disbelief and shame. And what would you do if you found out that someone everyone ignored was actually someone who surpassed them in every way? Would you change your view? Or would you remain trapped in your prejudices? Anna's story is about to teach us much more than just a lesson about fashion or poverty. It's a story that challenges us to look beyond the surface and not underestimate what can't be seen at first glance. Because the truth doesn't take long to shine, and when it does, it destroys masks, overturns destinies, and redefines power. Anna is ready to prove it. She just waits for the right moment to make the whole world collapse around her, and for that luxurious university to understand that real strength is not in what you wear, but in who you truly are. And the story is just beginning. Want to know what happened next? How did Anna endure weeks of mockery without breaking? What secret was she hiding? And most importantly, how did the news that exploded on campus forever change the pride of those who despised her? Don't go away, because soon you'll find out. This is not just a story about old clothes or ridicule. It's a story of unexpected justice, hidden power, and an indomitable spirit that no one could break. Get ready for an intense journey. A journey that may change how you see people, and maybe even yourself. Because Anna reminds us to never, ever underestimate someone who walks quietly and bravely, because their revolution could be just around the corner, and it will be unstoppable. You'll see those who laughed had to eat their words. And you, my friend, are going to understand why. Cold laughs and sharp whispers still echoed in her ears as they passed through the hallway. Every day, Mariana tried to go unnoticed, with her worn-out backpack and those jeans that seemed to live more adventures than any average student. The shiny heels and branded backpacks contrasted with her old clothes, a constant reminder that she didn't fit into that perfect universe the university seemed to demand. But there was something about her, a secret buried beneath those worn fabrics, that not even her cruel classmates could imagine.
At the center of it all was Clara, the undisputed queen of the popular group, always ready to throw a look of disdain or a sarcastic comment. "That torn jacket again, Mariana? Don't you have anywhere to buy new clothes?" she declared with a smile that could deeper than a knife. Mariana barely responded. She had learned to silence her voice to avoid attracting more attention. Inside, a mix of sadness and anger boiled, but no one could see it. The university was as shocked as where only appearances mattered, and worse yet, a stage where she was the perfect target for others as shamelessness. What Clara and her friends didn't know was that the young woman seemed ordinary and without opportunities, but the reality was completely different. Mariana kept a secret she had carefully maintained since her arrival at that elitist institution. A secret that, if revealed, would completely change the campus dynamics and put those who despised her in check. But she waited. She waited for the right moment, for everything to come to light, for the pieces of the puzzle to fit together like a slab to the arrogance of those who felt superior. In class, Mariana sat at the back, with a simple notebook and a cheap pen, but her grades shone with the effort and intelligence that most secretly envied. Professors began to notice her talent, although none imagined how much she was hiding behind that humble appearance. She reviewed books, solved complex problems, and participated in debates with the clarity of a genius. But in a classroom dominated by ethos with money, her voice was buried. One day, after an economics class, Clara couldn't help but throw one last comment as poisonous as always. "Mariana, maybe if you stopped spending so much time studying and actually looked for a real job, you could buy decent clothes." A mirror of cruel irony. Mariana remained silent, but when the news that would change everything appeared, that phrase became a kind of making prophecy that lost all meaning. The university was in full anticipation of the visit of the rector from a prestigious foreign university. No one expected Mariana, the girl who seemed invisible in the grand theater of student society, to be the protagonist of that moment, but she was. When announcing a contest for innovative projects, almost all eyes of the elite focused on their own groups and favored candidates. But when Mariana presented her project, a technological solution with real social impact, silence filled the auditorium. Her idea had surpassed everyone else's, even the most expensive fabrics. The news exploded. Mariana was not only talented, but her project had the backing of foreign investors, a fact she had kept secret to avoid premature attention. Suddenly, her shabby backpack and old jacket seemed irrelevant compared to her ability to change lives and her promising future. The rector himself congratulated her, dismantling in seconds the social construction that had marginalized her. The irony was perfect. The scorned young woman was the true star. Those who had mocked and excluded her didn't know how to react. Their laughter turned into uncomfortable laughs, their biting comments disappeared as if by magic. Clara tried to hide it, but deep down envy and astonishment intermingled in her gaze. Mariana finally stepped forward and broke the silence. "It's not about the clothes we wear, nor the money we have. It's about what we are capable of doing, even if you believed in it." She didn't disappear from the university or change to fit in. On the contrary, she kept her essence, her humility, and that aura of mystery that everyone now wanted to decipher. She had proven that behind a modest appearance could hide a giant potential. A lesson few would forget. But the story doesn't end here. Because just when it seemed that Mariana had won the battle, an unexpected new twist appeared. An offer that would change not only her life but also the perception of the entire community. An even deeper secret was about to be revealed, something no one imagined and that would turn the whole university upside down. And you, what would you do if you realized that the person you least expect has the power to break down walls and change destinies? Mariana was not just the student in old clothes, she was the one who told everyone that true value is not in what we wear, but in the strength we hold inside. But her story is far from over. There is much left to discover, many secrets that time will unveil. So, if you thought this was just a story of bullying and revenge, wait a little longer. The real surprise is just beginning. She crossed the campus with her gas lowered, knowing that every step could be watched with disdain. The clothes she wore were outdated, with dull colors and fabrics that had clearly been worn to exhaustion, but for her it was more than just clothing, it was her shield. While others sewed of branded garments that reflected their full wallets, she yelled so that each piece would last one more season. It wasn't just about money, it was also the constant reminder of where she came from and how she had gotten there. The university hall was seemed like an exclusive fashion show, and at the center of that world, wealthy students positioned themselves as relentless judges. The whispers were persistent. Did you see what she's wearing? It looks like the clothes have a life of their own, old and cheap, they said mockingly. There was no shortage of giggles and knowing glances, because at university, superficiality was sometimes a direct ticket to acceptance. Yet she never responded. She endured. Her silence was not submission, but armor hidden behind every shy smile. Her name was Valeria, and her story was much deeper than any cruel comment could imagine. While others opined and pretended not to see anything beyond a few old clothes, Valeria held her head even though inside, sometimes, she felt the weight of the world fall upon her shoulders. Her life was not easy. Her family fought day by day to support her, and she was determined to honor every sacrifice. But there was something more, something no one knew, a secret so big that no one could anticipate it.
That day the sun shone brightly, but Valeria preferred the shade of the trees. Sitting on a bench, she watched her classmates as they gathered in groups with laughter and jokes. She didn't belong to any of those circles, and that made her invisible or vulnerable, depending on how you looked at it. Suddenly, someone called her from behind, their voice loaded with mockery. "Hey, Valeria, what's that? Vintage clothes? You look like you walked out of a bad movie." Laughter erupted around her, and a group of boys with designer backpacks surrounded her. She had no choice but to smile shyly and keep walking, wishing she could disappear. But that day something inside her changed. She couldn't keep hiding behind her silence. Someday, she thought, she would have to show them that not everything is what it seems. While gathering her books in the library, she overheard a conversation that made her stop. Two students were talking about a startup contest that the university was going to organize, an annual challenge where the most innovative project was awarded. "It's important for those who want to make a name here," they said. "Of course, and the prize is a full scholarship and support to bring the project to life," one added. Valeria felt a spark of interest. What if that was her path to leave behind the looks and prejudices? But she didn't yet know that this contest would change her forever. The following days were a constant mix of classes, uncomfortable stares, and small attacks disguised as jokes. However, in the darkness, Valeria began working on her secret project. She had had an idea for some time that many would have discarded for seeming too bold or complex. An app that helps students with financial difficulties access academic resources and opportunities, something she herself wished she had when she started university. She worked on it passionately and quietly, using every free moment to improve and refine details. But she knew that presenting her idea in front of those same people who mocked her would be an act of brutal courage. Finally, the day of the presentation arrived. The room was full, and the familiar faces watched her, some with disbelief, others with barely concealed arrogance. She approached the stage with a steady voice. She presented her project with clarity, passion, and compelling data. It was clear she knew the problem well, because she lived it every day. She spoke about inclusion, real opportunities, changing the system from within. The room fell silent for a few seconds when she finished. When the jury announced that her project had won first place, the murmur was inevitable. Suddenly, those who had ignored or ridiculed her looked at her with different eyes. But that was not the most striking part. At the award ceremony, a video appeared that someone had prepared as part of the advertising campaign. It revealed Valeria's true identity. She was the daughter of a renowned businesswoman who had given up a life of luxury to raise her daughter with values and autonomy, preferring a simple life so Valeria could learn from the bottom up. The news surprised everyone because behind those old clothes and ostensibly chosen modesty, there was someone with a bright future, supported but without needing privileges. The tremor in her classmates' eyes was evident. Within minutes, perceptions had radically changed, and those same people who had mocked each other looked around, not knowing where to hide their shame. Valeria's story dazzled not only for her idea, but because it showed that real worth is never in appearances, but in determination and heart. But what would Valeria do after this revelation? How would she handle this new attention, between those who now wanted to be her friends and those who felt defeated without a fight? The truth is that this victory had not ended doubts or insecurities. It only opened a door to an uncertain and possibility-filled future. She had won much more than a prize. She had earned respect and, more importantly, shown that no one could be reduced to their appearance. As the echo of mocking laughter faded, something more powerful was taking place. The birth of a new version of Valeria, one who refused to hide and was ready to face whatever came. But as in every good story, just when it seemed the ending was near, an unexpected message arrived in her email. It was an invitation to a secret conference on technology and social impact, organized by a team few knew, and it could change the course of her life and her project forever. Who was this team? Why had they chosen her? Was this the opportunity that would change her life, or just another challenge to test her strength? The questions were there, floating in the air, as Valeria looked at the screen a second time, with a mix of excitement and nervousness that only the beginning of an adventure can provoke. The story of the student with old clothes was just beginning to be written, and this time, the whole world would have to pay attention. The university felt like a world apart, a universe where it had to fit in or disappear, and Laura knew this better than anyone. Her clothes, always humble, with a perfect target for laughter and whispers that slipped through the halls as swiftly as a silent poison. "You're wearing that shirt again? Don't you have anything new?" they had said more than once, with a crooked smile and eyes full of arrogance. But she never answered. She quickly learned that her words would only feed those social sharks who lived to point her out. So, day after day, she took a deep breath, hid her emotions, and immersed herself in her books as if they were an invulnerable refuge. What no one knew, and that was a whole mystery, was that behind that shabby appearance and shy face, there was something much greater than anyone could imagine. When Laura walked across campus with her slow steps, most saw only another girl, poor, vulnerable, easy to crush with sharp words. But she held an impenetrable secret, an ace up her sleeve that could withstand any attack, a secret that was about to come to light and blow everyone away. The first sign that something didn't fit in this game of appearances was the arrival of an unexpected package, discreetly dropped into her mailbox by a messenger one afternoon. The envelope, thick and bearing an official seal, had a name no one would have dared associate with the girl in old clothes, Laura Fernandez, only child of the Fernandez Rojas family, one of the richest and most powerful families in the city. A family wrapped up in multi-million-dollar businesses, technology investments, and a very exclusive social circle that made the usual arrogant campus crowd seem like just a handful of fish swimming in a puddle. From that moment on, the story began to spin much faster. Laura kept her head down and went about her business, but some faces changed subtly. For example, Daniel, the leader of the popular boys, who until recently had given her nothing but looks of disdain, began asking uncomfortable questions that seemed to hide a secret desire to understand how someone like her could be there, and now that he knew, maybe to expose her even more. "Are you really who you say you are?" he asked one day with a condescending smile that Laura ignored. Because for her, proving anything wasn't important yet. Every word could be a shot in the air, an enormous risk. She knew the truth could drop like a bomb at any moment, and she didn't want surprise to get the better of her. She had prepared the ground carefully. So she started showing up in class with the same bulletproof calm, letting her grades speak for her. She attended every seminar punctually, participated with growing confidence, and little by little began to break the glances and the mockery with another weapon, her intelligence. While others wasted their energy on parties and fashion, Laura devoured old and new books alike. All she could get to slip into a world where knowledge was power, even more than labels or money. But the campus does not forgive change and discomfort. The attention Laura now received was different but just as intense, and not always pleasant. Rumors started to spread, some fueled by envy, others by sheer disbelief. "That girl can't be from a rich family," some said. "She's probably lying to get attention," others whispered. That only fed the game. Laura began to feel like a prisoner of her own secret, trapped between two worlds that never fully accepted her. The tension grew until the day of the big university event arrived, the Talent and Projects Fair, where special recognition would be given to the best students. Laura, quietly, had worked hard on a project that combined engineering and sustainability, something never seen before in the faculty, and that left everyone speechless because it was not only innovative but also had a real, tangible impact. That day, while attendees enjoyed the other exhibits, word spread. Someone who not only dressed simply but did extraordinary things was going to receive the top prize. The tension in the air was palpable. Daniel and his friends, who had laughed without restraint before, now exchanged nervous looks, not knowing how to react to this unexpected blow. At the very moment the dean stepped onto the stage to announce the winner's name, silence was absolute. "Laura Fernandez," he said in a firm, clear voice that echoed throughout the auditorium. She walked onto the stage with the same calm posture, but the sparkle in her eyes was different. There was no triumphalism, no arrogance, just the satisfaction of proving, without words, that there was much more behind the old clothes and quiet smile. The effect was immediate and devastating for those who had scorned her. Their faces changed from haughtiness to pure astonishment. In the blink of an eye, the girl they had humiliated was now the star, the one setting the standard. And the final blow came when a university journalist interviewed her live for the campus's official channel, and the cameras caught the moment Laura revealed that, besides her talent and dedication, she was heir to and in charge of a multi-million-dollar fund dedicated to scholarships for students with limited resources, just like her. The contrast couldn't have been more striking. Those who had spent their time criticizing not only found themselves without arguments, but entered a loop of shame and forced admiration. How had they been so blind? What to them had been just old clothes and a humble facade was actually strategy, strength, and an unstoppable heart. At the end of the fair, dynamics changed. Laura didn't need to seek friendships or ask for respect. She earned it through actions, with the ability to show that the truth, even when it arrives disguised, always finds its moment to shine. And as she walked toward the auditorium exit, wearing her old jacket and her calm smile, she knew that chapter was only the beginning of much more. Because when someone truly knows who they are, no mockery can touch them, not even in a university where appearances rule. The whispering in the hallway never stopped. With every step she took, she felt the stares fixed on her worn-out shoes that had seen better days, and the backpack patched and stitched visibly. No one understood why Mariana frequented the university wearing such outdated clothes, much less why she never responded to the taunts. The hurtful comments continued, but she remained silent, her face impassive like a mask that showed no hint of pain or anger. No one suspected what she was silently keeping inside. Meanwhile, in one of the fancy cafes, one of the most influential boys on campus, Sebastian, threw insults disguised as jokes. Again the same, "Mariana, don't you have a mom to buy you new clothes?" he said, not realizing the impact of his words. Confident she would never reply. But Mariana didn't crumble. In fact, each day spent among those laughs and whispers was like a small victory, another proof that strengthened her resolve. She didn't know how much longer she could endure this game. She knew sooner or later the truth would come to light, a truth that would set everything straight and shake those insecurities disguised as arrogance that her classmates flaunted. Everything began to change the day the university newspaper announced a talent contest for students with innovative projects. Despite her shyness, Mariana decided to sign up. She secretly held a technological project she had been developing in her small room, with limited resources, without anyone's help, only with her intelligence and dedication. The news spread like wildfire, but no one expected her to participate. Some boys mocked the idea. Her? What could someone who can't even afford decent clothes contribute? They whispered, not imagining they were about to be victims of a monumental surprise. On the day of the contest, the main hall was full of students, professors, and sponsors. The energy in the air was a mix of nerves and excitement, with projects of all sorts that looked like they came from futuristic movies. When Mariana was announced, the silent laughter slowly faded, replaced by puzzled and curious looks. She went on stage wearing the same modest clothes, but with an invisible conviction that seemed to make her shine. She glanced at the audience and began explaining the work she had created, an intelligent device to help people with visual disabilities move around safely, using sensors and accessible technology. The simplicity of her explanation combined with the depth and usefulness of her invention. As she spoke, silence took over the auditorium. Sebastian, sitting in the front row, began to sweat. He couldn't believe the girl he had belittled was generating so much admiration. But the most incredible moment came when she announced that she had developed a device using recycled materials and low-cost technology, all for less than what he could spend on just one of the dinners he organized with his friends. Confusion grew as Mariana explained she financed everything with small scholarships, occasional jobs, and an anonymous donation she would never reveal. The mystery deepened. Who was Mariana really to have achieved so much with so little? Questions sprang among the attendees, but she didn't stop. She finished her presentation with a live demonstration, and it was astonishing to see the technology working perfectly, exceeding everyone's expectations. When she finished, the applause erupted. For those who had judged her by her old clothes, it was a direct blow to their arrogance. Sebastian, losing pride and reflecting on how he had underestimated Mariana, couldn't help but feel small and confused. But what no one expected was Mariana's final revelation. Behind her anonymity and apparent poverty, she belonged to a very influential family in the field of social technology who had decided to step away from the ostentatious world to educate herself humbly and prove her true talent without apparent help or privileges. Rumors began to spread rapidly. Why had she kept that secret? Mariana didn't want to give many explanations. She only said with a smile that true wealth was in what one could create, not in what one displayed outwardly. That phrase echoed powerfully throughout the campus, breaking down massive arrogance and making everyone reflect on how easy it was to judge without knowing. Every step she now took was accompanied by newfound respect, and her former bullies, especially Sebastian, were trapped in their own ignorance. As the days passed, Mariana's fame grew inside and outside the university. Not only had she won the contest, but she also received offers to develop her project on a larger scale, impacting not only her community, but many people in similar situations. And although her old clothes remained the same, because for her humility was not an appearance but an essence, each garment seemed to shine with a new dignity, that of someone who had silenced those who only knew how to judge by appearances. But the story was far from over. A new chapter was opening, full of challenges and revelations, because not everyone was happy with the change Mariana represented. Some powerful people inside and outside the university began plotting how to discredit her. Envy crept into the darkest corners, and a series of obstacles started appearing before her. However, what no one knew was that Mariana's true strength was not only in her intelligence or her projects, but in a much deeper secret, a part of her life she had never revealed and that, when it came to light, would shake more than one. Thus, while Mariana walked the halls that once humiliated her, now with her head held high, a question lingered in the air. What else was that girl in old clothes hiding, who had defeated her critics with nothing but her talent and silent resistance? Because sometimes the best-kept secret is the one that can change everything and make those who laughed end up being the ones who are now silent. And just as everything seemed to be settling, an unexpected call came to her phone, changing the course of her story and opening the door to an even greater mystery. Was Mariana ready to face the truth she had kept in the shadows for so long? Or would this battle end much sooner than everyone imagined? The silence that followed that call was more eloquent than any scream, inviting patience because what was coming was not just a revelation, but personal and collective revolution. The murmur in the hallway didn't stop, but she walked with her head held high, as if every hurtful comment was just a breeze that couldn't touch her. Her clothes, more worn and wrinkled than everyone else's around her, seemed like an invisible shield. However, that day something felt different, a strange sensation that ran through every inch of her skin. She didn't know that her patience was about to be rewarded, that the silence she had kept for months would soon come to an unexpected end. Every time she heard her classmates' laughter, louder and more mocking when directed at her, she pressed her lips together and took a deep breath. She knew giving up wasn't an option, not after her mother's sacrifice to keep her in university. Looking at them and answering proudly wasn't easy when they wore expensive brands while she inherited her older sister's clothes. But no one saw what was behind that appearance. No one suspected that beneath those faded outfits hid a brilliant mind, one of the best students in the faculty. Her name was Anna, and although her exterior betrayed poverty, inside she held a secret that had not yet come to light. While they compared her arrogantly, she accumulated hours in the library, completing assignments, studying with discipline that no trust fund kid seemed to understand. She wasn't seeking revenge or confrontation. She preferred her achievements to speak for her, for the truth to emerge relentlessly on its own. One morning, however, fate decided to accelerate her journey. The university announced a technological innovation contest, open to all students. The prize, a full scholarship to study abroad and the chance to present the project to investors. For Anna, this was the opportunity she had waited for her whole life. Could she change her destiny with this call? She didn't hesitate for a second and registered with the same discretion she had lived by until that moment. Days passed with moons and dawns, notes covering more pages than her old notebook, and her computer filled with programs and prototypes. While her classmates celebrated at luxurious parties, she silently created a project no one had imagined. The combination of her engineering skills and unique, deep and human touch brought her steadily and relentlessly closer to the goal. They were going to say her idea was too simple, even childish to those who believe innovation was synonymous with expensive sophistication. But Anna had something none of them understood: creativity born from urgency, real need, and genuine understanding of the problem. Her project was a device that allowed people with motor disabilities to control objects with their minds, a practical and revolutionary invention, designed with little money but a huge heart. When the day of the evaluation arrived, the room was full of shining, confident students. Anna faced a jury with only an old folder and her carefully structured notes. Silence fell. They looked at her clothes and adjusted their ties openly, sure they would quickly lose this time. But when she began to explain, her voice resonated with strength, clarity, and passion. The device worked in real time with precision and caused an unexpected reaction. One of the attendees joined the demonstration and successfully moved a glass with thought. The audience was shocked, and disbelief turned into applause that broke the ice of mockery. But the real bombshell came afterwards. When asked to finance the project, Anna looked each juror in the eye and answered that it had all been with her savings and part-time jobs. Then, one of the professors decided to investigate further and, to everyone's surprise, began reading aloud the news that had circulated in the media weeks before. A publication speaking about a young genius, self-published without seeking recognition, who had invented accessible technology to help vulnerable people. And to total surprise, Anna was the protagonist of that article. It turned out that she, despite hiding it, worked in a small social innovation lab, funded by a nonprofit organization with which she secretly collaborated. She was not just a poor student. She was a recognized inventor in specialized circles, though no one at the university knew. The very classmates who mocked her, with looks full of contempt, now couldn't hide their shame. Some applauded with nervous smiles. Others simply looked at the floor, unable to say a word. Anna received congratulations, but more importantly, she saw before her the transformation of those who had underestimated her. She felt powerful, not out of arrogance, but because of the dignity she had always maintained. However, before the story ended, she smiled with an almost imperceptible gesture. She knew this was just the beginning. Her secret was no longer one, and the path to her personal triumph was just opening before her. What new doors would now open? How would this revelation change her place in the university and, above all, her life? The lesson was clear. Those who seem the least are not always the least valuable. Sometimes true power lies in untold stories and silent battles, and in that inner fire no one can extinguish, no matter how much they try to smother it with laughter. Anna was much more than her old clothes. She was a living example that dignity is not worn with expensive brands, and that talent truly has neither price nor appearance. And as she returned to her place, the echoes of that day rang out like a silent chorus. the strength of the promise fulfilled, and the inevitable fall of those who bet on underestimating. Because sometimes the best-kept secret is not just a reason to surprise, but the force that drives change in the world. It only needed to be discovered. She never imagined that day would come, the day when the world that had ignored and underestimated her would have to eat its own words. While the echoes of laughter still vibrated through the hallways, something inside her began to burn, not out of resentment, but from a growing need to show that behind her old clothes there was no invisibility, but strength. At the university, where the shine of brand-name clothes and new cars dominated the gaze, she was a shadow, a whisper creeping through the corridors with her head down. But there was a calmness in her silence, a calm only someone who keeps a secret so powerful that no insult can break it can have. That morning, as students prepared for another round of classes, she sat in the cafeteria with her notebook and a discreet smile that seemed invisible to everyone. Her clothes had not changed, not in a long time, neither the simple cut nor the worn-out shoes. But there was something different in her eyes, a secret spark that even the most arrogant could not see. However, the torment was not over. During lunch, mocking laughter and sharp comments flew, from one group to another. "Don't you realize you look like a scarecrow?" they said, "or a little dignity, please." She endured. She did not respond. She had learned that silence was her best weapon, one she used to listen, observe, and wait for the exact moment to act. Meanwhile, a subtle change began to take root among the critical voices. Some started wondering, what is behind that insignificant girl in used clothes? Why doesn't she collapse? What makes her keep going despite everything? No student could explain the calmness and perseverance with which she crossed that minefield of prejudice and gossip. But if anyone had read between the lines, they would have discovered she was much more than the fragile appearance everyone saw. Secretly, she worked extra hours in the university's advanced technology lab, a place few were allowed. There, she was not just another assistant. She was developing a project that could change the industry, a secret invention no one expected from someone like her. The mockery intensified the following semester, but the bullying began to lose strength because she no longer needed their approval to move forward. That was when the news no one saw coming arrived. A prestigious national technological innovation contest would open that year, and the university had decided to participate with a surprise team. Most assumed the team would consist of elite students, flashy and confident. However, the selected team announced that its main member would be the student who always walked apart, distant, and underestimated. The entire classroom froze. Her? The girl in the old clothes? The disbelief was as palpable as the excitement. In the following days, rumors turned into questions, and doubts into surprise. She was not only leading a team, but also had in her hands a revolutionary prototype, a device that improved energy efficiency in homes and businesses, much cheaper and more effective than any model on the market. The classmates who had ridiculed her began to see her differently, but it no longer mattered to her. She had passed the point where other people's opinions could hurt her. What she wanted was to prove that true wealth is not in what we wear, but in what we are capable of creating. When the day of the contest arrived, tension was at its peak. All eyes were on the stage, but especially on her. She stepped up to the microphone, her clothing still modest, but her bearing showed an undeniable confidence. With clear words and uncontrollable passion, she explained how her invention could change lives, reduce costs, and protect the planet. Each slide she presented left those who had underestimated her weeks before more and more astonished. It was a moment of poetic justice, a silence charged with respect, replacing the laughter of the past. At the end, the ovation was an unexpected roar. Shouts of admiration, applause, and even tears from some of her former detractors who could not contain their emotion and pride in another success. At that moment, she understood that the secret she had patiently kept was worth more than 1,000 expensive wardrobes or exclusive parties. The success was not only hers. It belonged to all those who had once felt like they didn't fit in, who were ridiculed for how they dressed or who they were. It was a silent but powerful message. Dignity and greatness are built on will and talent, not on superficial shine. But this story does not end here, because one thing led to another. The unexpected fame put her under the spotlight of the media, professors, and even powerful investors who approached with offers. However, she stayed the course, aware of her values. What surprised her most was discovering that the group of wealthy students who had mocked her had a dark past and some secrets they never wanted to reveal. Gradually, that hidden side began to come to light, and the university itself was caught in small storms of scandals that exposed the superficiality and lack of real merit prevailing there. She, on the other hand, became a symbol of transformation possible through genuine effort and perseverance. In her moments of solitude, away from noise and prying eyes, she reflected on what she had lived through. She thought about her parents, who had sacrificed so much for her to study. She thought about her neighborhood, about the times when used clothes were the only option, and how that past had given her an inner strength no one could take away. Now she understood that clothes were just a wrapping, something that lasted little, while her ideas and values were what truly defined her and made her shine for real. And that certainty made her walk to the university with her head held high, confident that that chapter of mockery and contempt had only been the prologue to a much bigger story. Every day she received messages from other students who felt the same as she once had, invisible and judged. Her story had become a beacon for many. Some asked how she managed not to give up. Others wanted to know the secret behind that quiet strength that had always accompanied her. Her answer was simple but profound. Never let the world's opinion define you. What you carry inside is worth more than any label. And above all, be patient and work hard, because success that comes quickly usually leaves just as quickly. That phrase struck a chord, making her story shared again and again on social networks, inspiring those who needed it most. The irony of it all was that the very people who humiliated her had to hear, not once but several times, her winning speech. Some tried to approach her, apologize. Others simply remained silently ashamed. She looked at them with a mixture of compassion and firmness, a living reminder that respect is earned, not begged for. The university, which once seemed like a playground for a few, began to change, and part of that change bore her name engraved on a plaque recognizing her work in the most important technological innovation of the year. But the most surprising thing was that despite all the fuss and tension, she was still the same simple girl, with a humble spirit and a warm smile. She didn't need to change her style or pretend to be someone she wasn't to win. Her secret was not just the invention or intelligence, but the authenticity and resilience with which she faced rejection. And although the scars from those days never completely disappeared, they now serve as a reminder and motivation to keep moving forward, because she had proven something fundamental. Who you truly are is worth more than any cheap criticism. And just when it seemed the story was told, a new chapter opened before her eyes. An anonymous message arrived in her university email, hinting that someone within the group that had despised her was trying to sabotage her project. A new challenge, a new mystery that would test not only her ingenuity but also her integrity. Because in a world where envy and lies walk side by side, the real test is not to prove you can achieve something, but to know how to protect it, how to keep your truth intact in the face of lurking shadows. She read those words with the same calm that had always accompanied her. She knew this battle would be different, more dangerous, but she also knew she was not alone. She had gained something more valuable than prize, self-respect and the certainty that the cycle of mockery was broken forever. And with a deep sigh, she left the library, her clothes still old, but now, beneath that modesty, hid an unstoppable force only beginning to awaken. What will happen when everyone discovers how far she is willing to go? Time will tell, but one thing is certain. She will no longer be anyone's silent victim. This story is far from over. Since that day when they played the recycled fashion joke on her, Aitana noticed how her steps became quieter, as if her silhouette shrank amidst the university bustle. It wasn't just the clothes. It was the indifference that came as a package, ridicule disguised as laughter full of scorn. But despite everything, she chose to stand firm, brushing off every mocking glance with an invisible thread of dignity that only she seemed to feel. Her wealthy classmates, with their branded backpacks and forced smiles, continued to toy around her, unaware that behind that worn jacket there was a world about to explode. Every day was a minefield. In classes, whispers that whistled between the desks. In the cafeteria, murmurs loaded with judgment that she pretended not to hear. But the reality was that the weight of those comments was real, as if the echo of each word hurt more over time. Aitana, however, never responded with words. Her silence worked as a shield that kept the problem at bay, although every night, in the solitude of her small rented room, she wondered how much longer she could endure that imposed invisibility. She knew her economic situation did not change the measure of her worth, but the world seemed determined to remind her otherwise. One day, during a literature class, a rumor spread faster than the wind. A local newspaper had released unexpected news. Young student at our university, heiress of forgotten legacy, could be about to receive a fortune that will change her entire environment. The words exploded inside the room like a gunshot. Eyes slid toward her, and suddenly, that figure that had been ignored before gained a different aura, a mystery that many had never imagined. But Aitana, keeping calm, said nothing. Only a small smile appeared on her lips, as if she already knew that none of this was by chance. The following days filled with a different air, a disconcerting contrast. Those who had laughed at her before now cast curious glances, some tinged with discomfort. Those same people who had sidelined her in the past began seeking her attention, inviting her to their groups with feigned urgency. But Aitana knew the game had changed, and she had the strength to decide who she let in and who she kept out. In that university where appearance seemed to dictate the rules, a secret had taken an unexpected turn, and the protagonist was someone no one had wanted to know until then. However, the mystery behind that unknown legacy was not immediately clarified. A wave of speculation spread like wildfire through the hallways. Some said it was a millionaire inheritance. Others whispered connections to a multinational company. No one was certain, and that cultivated a new atmosphere, a mix of fear, envy, and fascination. Aitana, as if recognizing the opportunity, displayed infinite patience. Her silence, which once seemed submission, now became a powerful strategy whose outcome was about to surprise everyone. Meanwhile, in her daily routine, everything seemed the same. Classes went on, her clothes remained the same, and her attitude of humility and intelligence stayed intact. But small details began to change. A professor who had barely glanced at her before started discreetly praising her work. A group of students who barely exchanged words showed interest in her viewpoints during debates. That domino effect was no coincidence nor simply respect earned through effort. It was the inevitable consequence of a truth about to explode with force. And the truth did not take long to arrive. It was an autumn afternoon when the rector summoned her to his office, an unexpected call that she accepted without hesitation. The room was in a reserved corner of the main building, a place where few students had permission to enter. Her heart beat strongly, not out of fear, but because of the certainty that something big was about to happen. Upon entering, the university authority handed her a sealed envelope which, when opened, officially announced her condition. Aitana was, indeed, the sole heir to a vast fortune, belonging to a family that had vanished from public circles years ago, but now reemerged thanks to a previously unknown will. Silence took over the moment, and as Aitana processed the news, the rector confessed with respect and admiration that the university was ready to support her in everything she needed. But beyond the institutional, he knew that recognition would forever change her classmates' perspective, and that she should be prepared to take the reins of her new reality. Behind the image of a girl in worn clothes, there was an invisible story revealing itself like a silent earthquake, destroying prejudices and expectations with the force of truth. Nevertheless, the most important lesson was not only in the sudden wealth, but in how Aitana chose to use it. Instead of seeking revenge or fueling rivalries, she began promoting a project that supported students facing economic difficulties, becoming a living example of resilience and empathy. Those who had despised her before found themselves in an uncomfortable position, forced to reflect on their own attitudes and how they had judged without knowing her. Her clothes, once a subject of ridicule, became a symbol of struggle and authenticity, reminding everyone that appearances can deceive in the most absolute way. Every step Aitana took from then on was a reaffirmation. No one is what they seem at first glance, and true worth is not in labels or others' opinions. The university, a microcosm of society, had learned a powerful lesson thanks to her. The girl with old clothes had a secret no one had imagined and which, upon revelation, changed the game forever. Now, whenever someone looks back and remembers that story, they know that from silence can arise the strongest of voices, and that dignity, even without a designer label, is the most valuable garment one can wear. And what would you look at first? The clothes or the story behind them? She never raised her voice. Not even when a group of boys in branded clothes dared to make cruel comments as they walked near her. She used to ignore their laughter, their whispers, even the looks of feigned astonishment that turned into mockery as soon as she turned around. It wasn't that she didn't notice. On the contrary, she felt the sting of every gesture, but she learned to keep it inside, like a secret she couldn't afford to reveal. At first glance, she just seemed like the girl in old clothes at the university, the one no one expected or wanted in their circles, the eternal unwanted guest at any party. However, something in her walk, in the slight smile that sometimes appeared when seeing a book or hearing a lecture, indicated that she wasn't as simple as they thought. That morning, the university was especially cold, and the sharp wind was hitting the windows of the cafeteria, where she sat alone at the last table, the one everyone avoided. Her jacket, patched at the elbow, did not protect her from the cold nor from the murmurs filling the air. But if they could see beyond that ragged surface, they would understand that she was not just another girl with little money. The story no one suspected was about to become visible, with no room left to hide. While others laughed and made comment about brands and passing fashions, she remained calm, like a deep calm that precedes a storm. In that same cafeteria, not far from her, was Renata, the informal leader of the stylish girls group. Her laughter was one of the most common and feared sounds on campus. A queen of superficiality, used to taking every moment to remind others how much she had and how little her peers did. She and her friends strutted arrogantly, confident in their social power, with no doubt that the world belonged to them just because. But that morning something strangely caught Renata's attention. A notification appeared on her phone that changed the tone of her laughter. Not yet knowing what she was about to discover, she felt the air grow heavier, almost like a premonition. Meanwhile, in the main classroom, the professor began handing out midterm exams, and everyone prepared to show that not only appearance mattered at that university. The girl in old clothes waited calmly, almost as if she knew that none of it, neither the indifference nor the mockery nor that cold disregard from her peers, could stop what was about to happen. The key to her secret wasn't material, nor visible, nor even recognizable at first glance. It was a silence full of knowledge, a power reserved for those who knew how to look into shadows. And that power was about to emerge, revealing the truth that would tear down the whole false kingdom of appearances. The first thing that happened was a rumor that spread like the wind across campus. Have you seen who she really is? She's not the girl we thought. No one knew exactly what to include, but everyone looked toward that table, their hearts beating, trapped in mystery. Those who had mocked her could hardly believe what they heard, and easily, their arrogance turned into fear and curiosity. That was when questions began to arise, questions that until then seemed impossible to ask. How could someone so modest have those connections? What did she do with that charm that no one could explain? What secrets did she hide behind her silence? The student, whose name now echoed differently, raised her hand when the professor asked for volunteers to lead the new research project at the university. The room fell into a strained silence. No one expected her to volunteer, not even Renata, who with wide-open eyes, barely blinking, tried to understand what was happening. The girl not only spoke confidently, but explained with incredible precision and authentic passion that the murmurs began to turn into amazement. Her proposal shone and displayed a clarity and talent the class had never witnessed before. That was just the beginning. Suddenly, an email appeared on all the students' and professors' screens, sent without anyone knowing how. It was an official invitation to an international conference, organized by a major scientific organization. The sender was her, that student in worn clothes. The invitation carried her full name, supported by a list of publications and research projects few at the university could even imagine. Her professional profile was impressive to all, but especially devastating to those who had mocked her look and despised her. Silence fell over the room, heavier than ever. Why hadn't anyone known until then? How could someone with such talent and recognition dress as if she were nothing? Every question opened a door to another emotion, to another unexpected twist. She never sought to brag, never flaunted, because for her the material world was just a meaningless facade. What mattered was true value and perseverance. Now, with that revelation, those who had laughed were forced to face their prejudices and their own negligence. It was as if a spell had been broken. The girl in old clothes was actually a prodigy, one of those well-guarded secrets no one expected to find in the quietest corner of the university. Among confused murmurs, some students began to approach her, asking about her research, trying to decipher what she had hidden for so long. She answered humbly, without the slightest sign of resentment or arrogance. Her secret was not a weapon for revenge. It was an act of justice that exposed the injustice of judging by appearance. And at that moment, Renata, the queen of flashy fashions, felt her world crumble, feeling how that superiority based on superficiality began to seem empty and meaningless. The student not only had a brilliant mind, she had a story of sacrifices and silences few knew. Every old garment was a symbol of struggle. Every firm step a promise to herself not to be defeated by the weight of social indifference. Her secret was a revelation that not only changed the way she was seen, but also left open a bigger question. How many other good stories are hidden beneath appearances we do not know? That international conference was not only a prize for her, but also an opportunity for everyone else to understand that true value is not measured by labels or fleeting fashions. And as she walked away from the cafeteria, heading toward a life just beginning to bloom, her former detractors were left trapped in a silence that hurt more than any mockery. She didn't need to shout or prove anything with loud words. Her success and dignity spoke for her, much louder and clearer than any designer dress. Those who laughed first now looked on with a mix of regret and amazement, learning in the most forceful way that true greatness is not visible at first glance, but is revealed when least expected. And you, what would you do if you realized that the greatest secret is right in front of you? She never imagined that a single piece of news would change everything. She, always dressed in patches of old clothes, almost invisible to the bright and disdainful eyes of her wealthy classmates, was now about to give the harshest lesson to those who had mercilessly laughed at her. What secret did that quiet girl, with that shy smile no one understood, keep? What was about to be revealed would not only shatter prejudices, but rewrite her destiny in front of everyone. From the first day, the university had been a silent battlefield for her. While others paraded wearing expensive brands, she hid her soul in worn-out pants, patched blouses, trying not to attract attention. But of course, when someone like Esteban, the leader of the richest ones, pointed fingers and mocked her with a cruel laugh, it was impossible not to feel small. Where did you get that? From a flea market? They once said to her, in the middle of a hallway full of students who watched without intervening. And she only nodded, pressing her lips. Despite the humiliation, she maintained an inexplicable calm. No one knew why she endured in silence, nor the real reason that made her resist without protest. They also didn't understand how she could seem so indifferent, almost invisible, when in truth every insult cut deep. However, there was something more, a secret that followed her steps, something she protected with nails and teeth, that made her walk with her head held high despite the scornful looks. And that very thing was the key to a twist no one saw coming. Then came the day that changed everything. She carried it out without announcing it, with the tranquility of someone who knows nothing is as it seems. In the middle of the student meeting, exactly when the murmur reached its highest point and the laugh of the rich echoed like bullets against her, the young woman stood up and asked for the floor. Her voice, trembling at first, gained strength with each word. Attention focused on her, and for a moment, the kids who had ridiculed her felt uncomfortable. What was she going to say? Another excuse, a desperate attempt to fit in? She spoke of her family, of her past, of the difficult decisions she had made. But what no one expected was when, with an almost defiant calm, she announced that she was actually the only legitimate daughter of one of the greatest fortunes in the country. An inheritance in her name, just waiting for her to say the word that would change everything. While mouths dropped open and heavy silence fell, she just smiled slightly and added that she preferred to be respected for who she was, not for what she had. What followed was a whirl of emotions in the auditorium. Surprise, shame, disbelief. Those who had once pointed at her with disdain now couldn't look away. And she, calmer than ever, knew she had won something more valuable than a degree, intact dignity. But the question that hung in the air was worse for them. How long had they judged someone without knowing the truth? That doubt began to eat away at those who despised her, while the young woman left the place, knowing that finally she had earned a respect that no expensive clothing could buy. And just when it seemed that everything was over, something in her eyes hinted that this story was only beginning, because there are secrets that are not told, but that transform lives forever. Do you want to know what happened next?